Ladies and gentlemen, it is a distinct honor for me to introduce James Sheeler. Jim is a professor of journalism at the University of Colorado, and I'll excuse him when he has to leave. He has a 2 o'clock class in Boulder, so if he doesn't stay for the entire program, that's why. As I said, Jim's a professor at Colorado University and a, quote, scholar in residence, which is a very high honor. With Veterans Day just around the corner, Wednesday, November 11th, and this country in 2 wars, the subject final salute will help all of us realize that freedom is not free. When I met Jim at a book review in Vail, he told me, and I quote, "I wrote this book to help America understand the terrible cost some families are paying for freedom, and secondly, how the U.S. military is honoring them." Jim holds a journalism degree from CSU, a master's degree in journalism from Colorado University, and he was a reporter with the Rocky Mountain News for a number of years. He has been recognized nationally for his writings, 2 of which are National Book Award finalist, and last, a Pulitzer Prize winner in 2006. Please help me recognize Jim Sheeler.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's really an honor to be here, and I really appreciate the chance. I thought I would start off today with the way I tell my students to start, which is with a scene. And if you can imagine this scene, it's 2005, and I'm standing in the home of a pregnant 23-year-old war widow who just a few days before had learned that her husband had been killed in Iraq, and the day before had learned that the baby she was carrying would be a boy. She handed me a soft blue-green baby blanket, and then she told me its story. As I found out since beginning to report on the war, there are stories everywhere, and they hide in little homes all across the nation. And they hide in the shadows in places where I think not enough reporters go. I really decided that I wanted to find those places. I wanted to find those stories. And that's what led me to Kathy's home in Brighton, yes. And when I had arrived there, we talked about her life, about the life of her husband, and she just wanted to talk. That's what I found with so many families. They just want to talk. They want the public to know who the people are behind the numbers. That when you hear a number, it's not a number. There are so many faces behind that number. And it really stuck out to me when Catherine handed me this baby blanket. And you think of Marines, when I first started this, I actually had no military experience. My grandfather was in World War II, but he rarely talked about it. So going in, I didn't know that much about the military at all. In fact, one of the first stories I wrote, I actually referred to a Marine as a soldier, which is a mistake you only make once. So here I am in this home, and Catherine hands me this baby blanket of this hard, what I always imagined is this tough, hard Marine. And she said that when Jim, her husband, was up at Quantico training, she was alone much of the time, and so she started knitting. She started knitting, and then when they found out the baby was on the way, she started knitting all kinds of things for the baby. Baby booties, baby blankets, and this baby blanket that she gave me to hold. And then she told me its story. She said that the night before Jim left, he knew that he wouldn't be back in time to see the baby born, but he wanted to leave his child something. And so he took that baby blanket that she had knitted, and he slept with it. Because he said, when his baby was born, he wanted him to know how his father smelled. And for me, that was really all I needed to know about Jim Cathy. It's one of those quiet, touching moments that says so much about humanity. And in fact, that was the first line in my story the next day in the paper. The soft, blue-green baby blanket still smells like Second Lieutenant James J. Cathy. So I had gotten to Catherine's home. By then, I had been reporting on the war for a couple of years, starting with the first casualty from Colorado, Tommy Slocum, who was also a Marine. And in reporting his funeral, I started seeing things that I don't think enough people saw. I saw how the Marines stood over him 24 hours a day. I saw how even during the visitation, when Tommy's family went to the visitation, the Marines posted at their house just to make sure that, since it was public, that they were going to be gone, that nothing happened to the house. I told Tommy's mother, I didn't know they did that. She looked at me and she said, there's a lot of things that you don't know. And I decided there's a lot of things that all of us don't know, and I wanted to try and tell them. And so in the process, I started seeing all these things that were happening and meeting all these Marines and soldiers and sailors and airmen. And at a funeral at Fort Logan for 2 Marines who were killed on Veterans Day in Fallujah, I met a man named Major Steve Beck, who was a casualty assistance officer for the Marine Corps. He's stationed at Buckley Air Force Base, and along with training Marines to fight in Iraq, he was also saddled with the most difficult duty there is, which is walking up to a door and informing a family that their loved one had been killed in Iraq. And I asked him if I could follow him along as he just through the process. And at first he was very skeptical, understandably. Many military people are skeptical of the press. But I told him that I had no agenda. I just wanted to write down what I saw, the honor that I saw, the things that people weren't seeing. I told him I think I'd seen some of the same things you have. I've been in the homes where I've watched the widows reading their husbands' last letters. I've played on the floor with the kids whose dads aren't going to come home. I've been to the funerals. I've been down to Fort Carson where I talked to a 16-year-old girl who got sent to the principal's office because she wrote on the bathroom wall, "What do you do when your mom's in Iraq and you have nowhere else to turn?" Met another man who's another little girl who she actually thought her father lived in the computer because that was the only place she saw him when they were able to do internet chats from Iraq. So Major Beck said, okay, well, they have reporters embedded in Iraq. Maybe you should be embedded with us. And that's how I ended up in Catherine's house. Major Beck had asked her if we could visit her, and she said yes. And after we had talked to her, I asked her if I could come along with her as she brought her husband home. And at first she was also a little reluctant. But I told her, Catherine, I'd like to make you a deal. This is going to be incredibly intense and emotional. But if there's ever a point where you feel like we're too close and we're stepping on your emotions, all you have to do is just wave us off or look at us the wrong way and we're gone. And I think by giving her that power, by just trusting people, it created a trust between the two of us. And she knew she would never have to use that power. And she never did. She never waved us off the entire time. In fact, she said, I want you to be there for everything. I want you to come with us when we pick Jim up at the airport. I want you to be in the limousine with us. And that's how I ended up on that limousine, on that tarmac in the airport in Reno, Nevada in a few days. And how I wrote these words.